From the heart of the Space City to the heart of Gen Z, welcome to Next Gen Conversation. Not Dad's Talk Radio. Ethan talks to you about the issues and events that matter to our generation. This is the Next Gen Report with Ethan Buchanan.
Hey everybody, good afternoon. Hope we're all doing well. I hope you had a great weekend. I was out this weekend, so if you tuned in to the Sunday show and you didn't hear it, you heard the reruns. I was out. Forgive me. I needed a week off. I wanted to go do a historical reenactment, the Battle of Pleasant Hill. We had Caitlin Nicole Calhoun, who runs that event, on a couple of weeks ago. I hope you heard that. It was a great segment with her, and it was a great event. I mean, they really do it. If you're listening right now, guys, Pleasant Hill family, y'all put on such a fun event. It's great for us reenactors. I know I'm a nerd. I don't care. It's great for us reenactors, and it's great for the audience, too, if you just want to go spectate. The dates are already out for next year. Battle of Pleasant Hill, look it up. Look it up on Facebook. They're all over the place. I cannot recommend this event to you enough. It's such a great time, and I was glad I was able to do that. But I did miss being on the radio over the weekend, especially because so much happened. I mean, I keep getting tidbits of news that kind of leaked through from people, but I mean, I was living my entire life in like 1863, and then I turn around and we've blockaded a blockade of a blockade in Hormuz. I don't know what the hell's going on, but it was fun. It was fun. We've got a lot to talk about today. Before we get to everything we've got going on today, I want to give a shout out to our sponsor, Deus Vult lapel pins. I mean, I cannot say enough about these guys. I was just at a historical reenactment. History is super important to me. I love our country's history. I love my Christian history, the history of my faith. I love the history of the state of Texas. They have got pins for all of that at deusvultlapelpins.com. These are, for the most part, $6 a pop. $6 a pop. That's a really good deal for a really high quality lapel pin. You can use promo code NEXTPIN2026, get 10% off. Go on there, grab a handful of them. Pick a few of your favorites. If you see one you really like a lot of their Jerusalem cross pins are actually sold out right now. Click the notify me when available. They'll send you a text message or an email, whichever one you select, only when that pin becomes available, and then you can go online, you can order it. Again, these products are amazing. I wear one every single day. I'm wearing the Texas one right now. I love these pins. You're going to love them too. Go check them out. Support the show while you're at it. That's deusvultlapelpins.com, promo code NEXTPIN2026. All right, let's talk about the Dignity Act, because that's still around, that's still being pushed, and it doesn't seem to be going anywhere, which is a good sign. There's been a lot of very public pushback against this bill, as there should be. This bill is crazy. This bill is a terrible idea. There's no upside to this, and the fact that it's being pushed by so-called Republicans is a clear sign that we need to be doing a lot more work in the Republican primaries. So, the line we keep hearing about this bill is, it's not amnesty, it's not amnesty, it's not amnesty. It's dignity status. The dignity status that they're pushing, that's what they're calling it, dignity status, it's literally amnesty. It's exactly amnesty. There's no difference from the so-called dignity status and just actual amnesty. But they keep trying to convince us there is. Here's the video that Maria Salazar, who is promoting this bill, she put this up her own self. And this is how she goes and promotes this bill and swears up and down that it's not amnesty and we need to pass it because it's the right thing for Republicans to do. Take a listen to this.
Dignity offers you the possibility of coming out of the shadows, but does not give you a path to citizenship. It's not amnesty, it's not citizenship, it's just a new status called the dignity status, which then will give those illegals or undocumented the possibility of living a dignified life in the promised land, to continue working, to pay a fine for their crimes, to pay 1% of their salary to the Treasury, but be able never to be deported, be able to go home at night, to buy a home, buy a house, to buy a car, to have a credit card, raise their American children, and be part of society with no shame or fear.
Okay, a couple of things that are weird there. First of all, live in the promised land. Listen, I love the United States of America, but I have to wonder why you are using that particular language. That struck me as weird. I don't know if maybe I'm just being weird about it, but that just kind of struck me as weird. I don't know why. But also, again, That's literally amnesty. I mean, she seems to have it in her head that, amnesty means you automatically get citizenship, which isn't necessarily the case. I mean, amnesty might come with citizenship in certain situations. There may be examples of that in other places and other times. I don't know, but amnesty doesn't have to come with citizenship, and she seems to think that that's a defining factor of amnesty. So, I mean, we hear this word a lot, but it's very rarely defined, and it's kind of a loaded term. So let's dig into this a little bit. This is from Cornell Law School. So it's not just me making stuff up. Cornell Law School is a very well-to-do institution. It's a Ivy League university. So here's what they have to say about amnesty. To grant amnesty is to grant a pardon to those who have committed an offense. Under immigration law, amnesty is a governmental pardon for a person or group of persons who violated policies related to immigration. Immigration amnesty would include the government forgiving individuals for using forged false documentation to gain employment in the U.S. and to remain in the country, and would allow illegal immigrants or undocumented immigrant aliens to gain permanent residency in the United States. So that's her Dignity Act right there. The punishment is being completely wiped away. All you have to do basically is just pay 1% of your salary to the Treasury. That's the only extra punishment. So that's what? Like a slightly higher income tax, effectively. And we're supposed to believe her when she says that's not amnesty? Yes, it is. Yes, it clearly is. And again, this is being pushed by a Republican. And I cannot say enough how bad of an idea it is. Because I'll point you back to even her own language there, where she says they'll be able to raise their American children. How has that worked out so far? We've got basically first or even second generation, quote unquote, Americans, paperwork Americans, as they've been called recently, who are still loyal to their home country, still in some cases loyal to ISIS and trying to bomb Americans here in the United States. This happened just a few weeks ago in New York, and we've completely forgotten about this. So no, I do not want a bunch of paperwork pseudo-Americans that are allowed to just freely raise their children here in the United States and completely and permanently alter the fabric of my country. I don't accept that. I don't care how much you think they deserve it because, they've been here working under the table for however long. Deport these people. If they want to come back later legally, maybe we can have that discussion, maybe, in like 50 years. All right, listen, we have got a lot more coming up. We'll be right back with more of the Next Gen Report in just a minute. Alrighty, welcome back. The Next Gen Report. I am Ethan Buchanan. Follow me real quick on X at _Ethan Buchanan, BUCHANAN. If you're hearing me now for the first time in this Wednesday time slot, we are normally on 7 p.m. right here on AM 950 KPRC. But listen, you can watch the entire show, past episodes of the show, all of that on X. We've got visual elements here. You're missing out if you're not seeing them. We're recording right now. The camera is rolling. Those visual elements are going to be on X. That's where you're going to want to see them. So anyway, we're talking about the Dignity Act. I cannot express enough disdain for Maria Salazar for pushing this. But something that I want to make sure people really understand is how Maria Salazar is pushing this, because I think it very much exposes the sort of uniparty issue that we've been talking about more and more and more on both the state level and the national level for years now. She's not just saying or using, I should say, she's not using language that would suggest this is some sort of compromise with the Democrats on illegal immigration. That would be one thing, and I think that's bad in and of its own right. There can be no compromise here. Every illegal alien, without exception, every single one, must be deported. Most legal immigrants, maybe not most, but at least a significant number of legal immigrants need to be denaturalized and then deported, or had their legal status revoked and deported. This is a huge problem in the United States, but especially on the illegal aliens. There absolutely cannot, for any reason, be any sort of capitulation or sacrifice or deal cutting from the Republicans with the Democrats on this. But that's not even how Representative Maria Salazar out of Florida is pushing her Dignity Act. She's adopting the exact same language that the Democrats have used to push mass immigration on Republicans for years and years and years. The only exception is she's very specifically and very intentionally disavowing the word amnesty. Now, she's quite literally pushing amnesty, as we talked about in the last segment. This is word for word, literally amnesty. I read you the definition from the Cornell Law School. I mean, what she's put forward in this bill is literally amnesty, but she's trying to disavow the word amnesty. And other than that, she's just grabbing every left-wing talking point and using it to push mass migration and the legalization of mass migration. And the latest example of this is she goes and she starts throwing out, oh, well, we need to prove we're not racist. That's why we have to do this bill. We have to prove to the Hispanic community that we, the Republicans, are not racist. And then the Democrats will be defeated. And they will never be able to win the Hispanic vote ever again. Because we, the Republicans, the benevolent Republicans, will have proved that we are not racist. That is so stupid on so many levels, just from a political strategy point to a preserving the sanctity of the United States. That is crazy. It's just crazy. We do not need to prove that to anyone. All right? The Republican Party is visibly not racist. We do not have to give ground to the Democrat Party and say, oh, look, hold on, let me give you, 10 million illegal aliens so that you won't think I'm racist. We just don't have to do that. And then on top of that, they're going to think you're racist anyway. For no reason at all should you think, oh yeah, this is a good point. This will finally prove we're not racist. No, it won't. You're still racist. In their eyes, you will still be racist. This will do nothing. And we know it will do nothing because it's done nothing in the past. This has been the argument from the left forever. Oh, you have to prove you're not racist. Oh, you're racist. That's why you support this thing. And then the Republicans will capitulate because, oh, I don't want to seem like I'm a racist. And then guess what? You're still racist anyway. We had years and years and years of policy capitulations to the Democrats, to the left, so that we could prove we're not racist. And then 2020 rolls around, and guess what? You're racist anyway. Some guy OD'd on fentanyl, and now the entire country is still racist, despite fighting racism and equalizing races in the United States since the very beginning of the United States. You're racist anyway. But let me just show you the clip. Before I spend all of my time this segment ranting about the clip, here is the clip. This is Maria Salazar with Brian Kilmeade on Fox News Radio saying, this will do it. This will finally prove to the Democrats that we are not the evil racists they think we are. Take a listen.
Because look, it's impossible if we, the Republicans, put together a bill like this one on the floor for any Democrats with Hispanics. Supposedly, Hispanics belong to the Democrats. Not anymore. Because right now we're going to be demonstrating to the Dems that we are not such a bunch of racists, that we're giving them dignity, not.
We're not racist because we're giving them dignity, amnesty. If we give them amnesty, we'll prove we're not racist. This is exactly what Ronald Reagan did in 1986. Oh, we're not racist. Look, here's amnesty for all these illegal immigrants that got here before, 1982, I think was the year. Great. How do you prove that exactly? Real quick, let's just how do you prove that you illegally immigrated before 1982? Is there any evidence of that? And then now amplify that over, the 4 years of the Biden administration. Because I believe the Dignity Act, if you came into the country after President Biden took office, you're not eligible for this, according to the text of the act as I understand it. But great, how do you prove that? Because, yeah, sure, we have a bunch of illegal aliens that were caught and released into the country. We have a whole lot more that weren't caught at all. That when the big hordes of people were turned over by the cartels to the Border Patrol, and the Border Patrol agents in that area were distracted, they snuck around. They got into the country another way. Talk to anyone who worked border security during that time, and I've talked to a bunch. They will say that was the strategy. There'll be a handful of people that they turn over to Border Patrol at the border. They intentionally get caught so that they can get processed and released into the country. And then everybody else will sneak around, and they'll get in a whole bunch more that way. And so there are tens of millions of people that are in this country that we have no record of. And we can't prove that they weren't here before the Biden administration. And they will get amnesty because that's what this bill is offering. And yet Maria Salazar will go and say, oh, well, we have to prove to these people and to the Democrats that we're not racist. No, we're not racist. We want to enforce our borders, and there can be no exceptions. It's not racist to enforce your borders, and you do not have to prove to the Democrats that you are not racist in order to enforce the borders. If the Democrats think border enforcement is racist, not enforcing the border isn't going to change that. The Republican Party is and always should be the party of secure borders. And that will always mean the Democrats will call you racist. There is no exception. It doesn't matter what you give to them. I am so tired of this bullcrap that we get from these uniparty Republicans that, oh, we just have to prove to these Democrats that we're not what they say we are. They know that, damn it. That's not why they're saying it. They're saying it because they know they'll get these squishy Republicans like Maria Salazar and these soccer moms that are so worked up about being viewed as nice people. They can get just enough votes in just the right places at just the right times to push through whatever they want. And they will make capitulations in words. They will say, oh, yes, we'll give you this because you're giving us that. And then they will turn on you and they will stab you in the back. If you don't believe me, ask Ronald Reagan. Because one of the deals, or one of the terms of the agreement for Ronald Reagan's amnesty bill was we're going to have very strict enforcement about hiring illegal aliens. How has that worked out? It hasn't. They lied to Ronald Reagan. They stabbed him in the back on this. And now we have tens of thousands of illegal aliens, if not millions, illegally working in the United States. And how have the Republicans not learned their lesson on this? Wake the hell up. They are lying to you. All right, we've got a lot more on immigration. We'll be right back. Alrighty, welcome back to the Next Gen Report. We're still talking about immigration. And you would think that, oh, we have a Republican majority in the House and the Senate, and Donald Trump is president, so this should be a non-issue, right? This should be handled. We shouldn't have to worry about it. But no, life is not that easy. If that's what you were hoping for when you walked into the voting booth in November of 2024, I hate to say it, but that was kind of naive. But anyway, we've got Maria Salazar here pushing amnesty. We've got Democrats trying to sort of browbeat Republicans or even kind of moderate centrists who don't like hordes of illegal aliens bum rushing the country into no longer supporting immigration enforcement. And they're doing this in a couple of ways. They're doing this with the, oh, we have to let these people in to prove we're not racist. That one's more targeted at the soccer moms. The thing that they've really kind of locked down and are very good at, to their credit, is saying, oh, well, innocent people are getting swept up in this. And so we can't have it. You know, if one innocent person gets, arrested, detained by ICE, denaturalized, deported, what have you, that's too many. And God forbid this happens to an American citizen. We could sweep up an American citizen in this, and they'll be deported too, and it'll be terrible. I just don't believe that. I just don't. Now, people do believe it. It's very effective when they're going after those soccer moms. It is. But more and more, we keep saying that this really isn't a valid argument. This doesn't happen. This isn't real. You know, there was a example. I've played it on the show. It was a while ago. I talked to this guy at the first round of No Kings protests here in Houston, where I said, hey, you know, why are you out here? You seem to be a proud American. You've got an American flag here. You're very excited. And he's like, yeah, no, I'm a proud American. I love the Second Amendment. I love la-di-da-di-da. But, you know, I've heard about American citizens being deported from the country, everything taken from them, and they're sent to El Salvador or Guatemala or where have you, wherever we're deporting people to these days. I was like, oh, yeah, obviously that's really bad. Americans are Americans. That shouldn't happen. Can you point to an example of this? And he's like, no, I can't. But nevertheless, these stories are floating around. There was a story that floated around last month of a lady named Sundas, or she went by Sunny Nakvi. She was 28, and she was supposedly detained by ICE for 43 hours. Oh, how terrible. She came back from a business trip in Turkey. She was detained by ICE, and they held her for 43 hours and dropped her off in Wisconsin, a place where she didn't live, out in the middle of nowhere. She ended up getting, you know, passed around a couple of different detention centers and a county jail, and then boom, wound up in Chicago where she didn't belong, or Illinois or what have you, or Wisconsin, wherever it was. And obviously that would be terrible. If that happened, we need to, you know, work on our systems. We need to make sure that shouldn't happen, because if she's a citizen, she's a citizen. Now, one might think, okay, well, if you're a citizen, that's pretty easy to prove. If you've got an up-to-date ID that's Real ID compliant, it shows it right there. If you were on a international flight, which she was, from Turkey to the United States, you should have your passport right there, your American passport. Look, here it is. I'm a citizen. They don't just hand these out. You have to do some things to get one of those, right? So on its face, this story didn't make a lot of sense, but the headlines ran and people believed it. We now know, as I suspected all along, that this was completely fabricated. From the New York Post, accused liar claims she was detained by ICE for 2 days, but was actually getting a hotel spa treatment, according to a lawsuit. So basically, all of the people, including the county sheriff that was effectively defamed by this woman, by these false claims, are now suing her, saying, you made this up and we can prove it. He claimed Nakvi was released from custody in the early hours of March 7th and then hitchhiked 9 miles to a hotel. This is the line from the people that are pushing this false claim. She ended up in a county jail, and then she was released from custody and forced to hitchhike to get back to her family. The Department of Homeland Security refuted these claims, saying they're blatantly false, even posted surveillance footage from the airport showing Nakvi entering a secondary inspection zone that morning and leaving around an hour later. That's really not that bad. I know people that get randomly selected, quote unquote, for these secondary inspections. They're not that bad. 90 minutes and then you're out. Miss Nakvi departed CBP within 90 minutes of her arrival to the United States. She was not taken into custody or transferred to ICE for detention, DHS wrote in a March 10th X statement. The Dodge County Sheriff's Office also said that it had no record of Nakvi ever being booked, detained, or released. All of those things come with a record. If you're booked, detained, or released, there's a record of it. So this was completely made up, and they have the receipts. She checked into the Hampton Inn and Suites in Rosemont for the entire duration of this alleged event. The folio shows Nakvi checked in at the Hampton Inn, just a 10-minute drive from the airport, at 1:17 p.m. March 5th, while texted messages with an unidentified witness over the following days show she enjoyed free food and spa service and trips to the gym. So this was completely made up. Completely made up. And rest assured, it will be proven that this was fake. This was a lie. But that doesn't matter. Regardless of the outcome of this lawsuit, the headlines have already ran. People have already seen it. People have already believed it. Those people are not necessarily going to see this new article that shows that it's false. And that could be for a number of reasons. Maybe they don't follow the New York Post. Maybe they aren't interested. Maybe their algorithm just isn't tuned the right way on whatever social media site they use. And so they're not going to see it. They're not going to know she was lying. And then people like radical leftists on the Houston City Council can point to this and 74 random traffic stops where illegal aliens were caught and say, oh, we have to do something about this as the city of Houston. And that's what's happened. All right? You may have seen this dialogue. The city of Houston passed an ordinance that was pushed by 3 radical leftists on the Houston City Council, including my councilwoman, Abby Kamen, who is terrible. I've talked with her a handful of times. She's just a radical leftist. And listen, she's decent on some public safety things. I'll give her those credits. But she is absolutely terrible on this, and she should never hold public office again. But she's using these immigration issues to propel herself forward, and now she's probably going to be the next county attorney. This is terrible. And she points to examples like this, and she wins over the hearts and minds of people, of fellow city council members, and she's able to push policies that restrict HPD cooperation with ICE. And that is bad for everybody. And that's what we're going to dig into next. So just to give you the premise, HPD's policy has essentially been, since Mayor Whitmire got into office, we are not going to go out of our way to enforce immigration law because that is not our job. And he's right. I'll give him that. That's fair. I think any spare resources HPD has should be used to, whenever possible, aid immigration enforcement. But I also recognize that HPD doesn't really have a lot of spare resources right now. Anyone that follows city politics will tell you that. HPD is short-staffed. They're short-funded. Mayor Whitmire is desperately working, to his credit, to fix that problem. He understands the importance of law enforcement. And so his policy has been, if HPD officers pull over a traffic stop, run somebody's ID or whatever or name, and they discover in the system that ICE has issued a warrant for this person, we will hold them for 30 minutes. ICE agents has 30 minutes to get there and take this person into custody. Now, on the one hand, I wish that HPD would just hold that person until ICE gets there. There shouldn't be a time limit on that. But I also do understand the argument that, hey, we have limited officers, we have limited resources. There are big, more immediate crimes going on that are more serious, robberies, murders, things like that. We need our resources to be flexible. We can't tie them down doing this. Fair enough. I'm open to that. All right. I don't necessarily agree to it, but I'm open with it. Now, Abby Kamen and 2 other city council members really didn't like that. And so they used Proposition A, which is a city rule, basically, that allows any 3 council members to bring an ordinance up and place it on the city council agenda, and then everybody can vote on it. And so they did that with a new rule that heavily restricts ICE cooperation, or HPD cooperation with ICE. And Whitmire at first said that, hey, this was a bad idea. This isn't going to work out. We shouldn't do this. This isn't going to pan out the way we want it to. And then it came up and he voted for it and it passed. It passed, I think, 12-6 was the final vote, something like that. And there we go. It went into effect. And obviously it went terrible. Now, the HPD policy hasn't actually changed yet. Lord willing and the creek don't rise. It won't. We'll talk about that more in just a second because we're running out of time. But essentially, this has now blown up. It has become a big statewide story, and it's going to continue to be a big statewide story. It's going to become the subject of a city council meeting on Friday where they may just immediately turn around and overturn this ordinance. So anyway, a lot of chaos there. We're going to talk about that coming up. I'm Ethan Buchanan. We'll be right back with more of the Next Gen Report in just a minute. All right, so we're talking about all this drama that's going on with the Houston City Council ICE ordinance. I think it's important to point out that the Houston City Council, or the Houston City, all of it really, is very, very budget strapped. There's a lot of reasons for this. There's not really one key reason. There's just a lot of different reasons. The biggest one, I think, is just years and years and years and years of mismanagement of our funds, waste of our funds, abuse, fraud, et cetera, all the buzzwords. The Houston Police Department is, of course, going to fall victim to this. This affects them as well. This is why we've had things like massive numbers of cases not really being investigated, not being dealt with, not being addressed. We've had officer shortages. We've had equipment problems. We couldn't afford to buy new cars for our officers for quite some time. It's been a huge problem for a long time. One of the reasons this ICE cooperation ordinance was such a big deal is because a lot of people, including myself, including Mayor Whitmire, predicted that if this ordinance was passed, it would lead to a bunch of money that had been given to the Houston Police Department by both the federal government and the state government being revoked. And that's exactly what happened. Almost right after this ordinance was passed, we started seeing people like Ken Paxton saying, I think this might be illegal. I'm going to investigate this. Because what the ordinance essentially did is say, hey, these officers actually have discretion on whether or not they're going to call ICE about people they find that have ICE warrants. We're not going to take those warrants particularly seriously. Officers can just decide not to if they want. And we're going to make HPD give us reports about how many people they have called ICE on, so that presumably we can then use these reports to browbeat ICE officers and the mayor or whoever else isn't being radical enough when it comes to immigration. And of course, state law, state policy from any number of elected officials, including the governor, is that, hey, we are a law and order state. We are a closed border state. We're not going to allow this. We're going to enforce immigration law wherever we can, assist wherever we can. And now, of course, Houston, being budget strapped, got a bunch of money, something like $100 million or $110 million. I've seen both numbers. They got that money in a grant from the state of Texas, from Governor Abbott, saying, hey, I know you guys are strapped. You're trying to do law enforcement. You're trying to do it right. We'll give you some money to help out. And the moment they released this policy, or this ordinance, the policy actually never came out. The actual HPD policy still has not been released yet. I believe they were still working on it. Now it might never be, because on Friday, they hopefully will overturn this ordinance. But the ordinance was, I think, probably a violation of Texas law. The Attorney General thinks there is at least a chance that it was a violation of Texas law, and he said he's going to investigate it. And Greg Abbott turned around and said, hey, this wasn't the deal. I gave you guys this money to enforce the law. I'm taking it back. So here's what he put out on Twitter. Greg Abbott said Houston received more than $100 million from the state based on a written agreement that they will comply with immigration enforcement. If they refuse to comply, they better get out their checkbook. It will be costly if they refuse to keep their streets safe. Now, as a Houstonian, I appreciate this from the governor. We need the state to reel in our radical localities. Listen, I love the city of Houston, but there is a lot of room for improvement here, especially on the crime issue. And listen, I don't want HPD to lose that $100 million or be forced to repay that $100 million. But if that has to be used as a lever to get the city of Houston HPD to follow the law, and listen, this is in no way meant to be an attack on HPD or the officers. I think they want to do their job. They want to enforce the law, but they're victims of the political system here. And listen, that's just the way it is. Their lives might have to be more difficult in order to force city council to not be crazy. And that seems to be the way things are going right now. John Whitmire, for his part, actually released a statement about all of this. Here's what he had to say right after Greg Abbott put that statement out. Mayor Whitmire's statement on state's threat to cut public safety funding. Last week, I voted for the revised Prop A ordinance on immigration, believing it affirmed our original policy. Houston enforces state and local law, not federal law, and we are not ICE. However, Governor Abbott disagrees. Today, the state notified the city of Houston that it is withdrawing the $110 million in public safety grants because the ordinance violates the grants agreement between the state and the city of Houston. This action follows a letter from Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton, who has started an open investigation into whether the ordinance violates Senate Bill 4. I repeatedly warned the ordinance sponsors, council members Salinas, Kamen, and Pollard, about the legal and financial risks associated with this approach. This is a crisis situation. The potential loss of state funding poses real challenges for the city of Houston police and fire departments and will impact public safety services across our city, the 2026 FIFA World Cup preparations, and the Homeland Security Department. Our public safety departments rely on a combination of local, state, and federal resources to operate effectively. We have significant work ahead, and I'm considering all options. Now, he's called a Friday meeting of the city council. The agenda item, the only agenda item I've seen from that is we need to repeal this. And listen, I will give John Whitmire a lot of credit. I'm friendly with him. I've talked with him a number of times in my work with KTRH News. I like the guy. I do. I don't know why he voted for this. It doesn't make any sense to me that he would vote for this. He's a smart man. He is. He must have known that this is what was going to happen the entire time. Now, he says he thought the ordinance just affirmed current policy. Maybe he did. But he must have known that this was going to be the reaction from state officials. He must have. Now, maybe he was just trying to make his point to the radical Democrats on city council by giving them what they want and then moving on. Maybe. I don't know. But this was always the way this was going to go, and it was a terrible idea from the start, and I don't think Whitmire should have voted for it, even if he did think it was the right thing. And again, listen, I like Whitmire. I'm not trying to bash Whitmire. I do think he does want what is best for the city of Houston. I do. He has told me in conversations that, listen, he's not trying to pursue some future higher office. He wants to do this term as mayor and then one more term as mayor, do everything he can to fix the city, and then retire. And I think that's honorable. I think that's great. And I believe him when he says he wants to fix the city. This was stupid. This was a bad move. Why would you vote for this? Why? It doesn't make any sense. You shouldn't have voted for it. Even if you thought it had been amended, it had been fixed, the problem was solved, you knew this was going to happen the entire time. You told us you knew this was going to happen the entire time. Now, of course, he has spoken out about this since it passed, and he is again saying, listen, we are at the mercy of the governor here. This is the governor's money. He granted it to us, and now he's saying he wants it back.
There's a real concern about we lost it. You know, some say it's a threat. No, we lost our state funding to the tune of $110 million. Yesterday, about 3 o'clock, they closed our accounts. So we've got to address this serious matter. We had a reasonable immigration ICE policy that was working well, but 3 council members that are running for office decided to make this a higher profile issue. The law requires us to look for warrants. If an ICE warrant comes up, we had to check with ICE to see what their plans were.
And he's right. That is the state law. That state law should be followed. And any means state officials like Ken Paxton or Governor Abbott have to ensure that that state law is enforced. I support it, even if it makes my life harder because, you know, HB doesn't have the funding they need. And listen, I want HPD to be funded, but I want the law to be followed even more. So, hey, this has been the Next Gen Report. I'll be back Sunday, 7 p.m. right here on AM 950 KPRC.